Coming to Chaos, Chaos55t here, and welcome back to part 3. And this time I'm going to add eerie music because, of course, it just gets worse and worse as the freaking years go by with Richard. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about in part 3 is the fact that Richard mooches off of people. Now, you remember in part 2 where basically Richard gloats about how they don't have anything in their house that's worth a value, even though all they have in their house is a roof over their head and a hoard pile of things that their boyfriend has bought for them. Now you're wondering, why can't Richard get a job and try to live normally? Like, I've seen Richard walk around just fine, it's just that they complain so much like a fucking child. But that's not the reason why they refuse to get a job. It's because they want to meet the requirements to get a welfare check. Now here's where I found it very shady, because in the state that Richard lives in, you are not allowed to make more than $1,500 of income in your own home. Which should mean that it's okay for Richard to actually get a part-time job and make a little extra money while getting welfare checks, right? Nope. Richard told me something else. That the state says that you have to not have any job or any source of income in order to get a welfare check. Thank God I actually did research when looking up the requirements of getting a welfare check. But as soon as I confronted Richard about this, of course they bring up sob stories about being abused by their previous loved one, then says over and over,
"I'm broken, I'm not capable of getting a job."
Two things wrong with that. Richard wasn't diagnosed from a professional saying that they're incapable of getting a job. They self-diagnosed, which in many cases is illegal. The other problem is, Richard claims to have PTSD and says that no work would want to hire someone with a disability at all. But later down this huge-ass list, that's when you'll realize that Richard is being a hypocrite, but that's besides the point. There are plenty of work opportunities for people with many forms of disabilities, like what the fuck, Richard? But we gotta remember, Richard is a narc, and wants to manipulate ways of getting out of any situation, even if it means to get free money from the fucking government. The next thing Richard has done still ties into the fact that Richard is a hypocrite. Richard tries pressuring me into getting a job. Oh, I'm sorry, a real job. Richard's one of those people that thinks that anything you do online that makes you money is not a real job, but a scam, or a hobby that makes you money. Isn't that what the definition of a job means? Nope, not in Richard's eyes. Because of course, Richard says the only real job in the world is construction. Yeah, sure. So, being a movie director, being a doctor, being an astrologist, being all those bigger people out there that make so much money, that's not a real job. They need to work at construction if they want to get a real job. But wait, doesn't real jobs not allow people with disabilities to be hired? Yeah, they didn't think that one through due to the fact that I have Asperger's syndrome. Of course, they decided to change up the moral because they found out that's not going to benefit them, by saying,
"I mean different severities and disabilities, mine is worse."
Quit moaning, we're all hurting!
Thank you, Brian Regan. Still speaking of jobs, I've tried to apply for a job at an elderly home. Of course, when Richard found out about that, they kept doubting me. They kept saying all these really nasty things about me to try to make sure that my confidence was very low. On the screen right now is all the quotes that Richard and their boyfriend has said to me on my way to getting a job. And thanks to all this bullshit, I didn't get any confidence in myself and ended up not getting the job. Of course, on my way back, I got an earful from both the boyfriend and Richard, all in which are very contradicting.
Well, you lacked in confidence, of course you're not getting the job. I got hired on my first interview. I'm surprised it did not pass down through genetics. I am very disappointed in you.
Then suddenly they decided to say this.
It's okay, no one gets the job on their first interview. I only told you all that earlier just to try to boost your confidence.
What? That is not how you boost a confidence. Insulting, mocking, being ableist is not the way to boost anyone's confidence. Of course, their excuse when I called them out was,
"Oh, don't get so sensitive over it. I used to use this method a lot on myself when getting a job."
Of course Richard uses that card. It's a narc's way of controlling your emotions. Speaking of controlling, Richard has a nasty habit of controlling people and how they look.
Your arms are too skinny. Your gut is too chubby. Your hips are too wide.
But when Richard is not insulting a person's current appearance, they do this.
I recommend you get tattoos all over your body, just like me. I recommend getting plastic surgery, that way you can look as pretty as the girls in the magazine.
And sometimes Richard pulls at their own ego.
You'll never have the beautiful natural look that I have. I never got plastic surgery. My body is just flawlessly natural.
Last time I remember, they were actually under the knife getting plastic surgery around certain areas of their body. Ah yes, so natural. They're just as natural as Kylie Jenner's lips. Another thing Richard has done is that they blame anyone for anything, even if it was just an accident or the person never did it to begin with. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Anytime Richard gets late from any doctor's appointment, they'll blame their boyfriend for not reminding them of the appointments, even though the boyfriend was not informed of any scheduled appointments. Richard will do anything to avoid blaming themselves, even if it were to be so ludicrous as to say, "My dad was the cause of the thunderstorm that happened in Richard's area." Richard's blame game gets so bad, it goes to the point where it's just defamation and framing. I'm gonna have to end it here. Again, I barely scratched the surface. Hope part 4 will end it. If not, more to come. This is Chaos55t signing out.